Well, hello again, and a warm welcome to our first speaker on the second day of WAF 2021. And I'm delighted to introduce Ben van Berkel from UN Studio. Ben's been a contributor to WAF in the past and has been a great supporter. And the practice, as you probably know, is famous for its winning strategies. It wins competitions across the world. And it wins them on the basis of thoughtful analysis and really thinking about the condition that we find ourselves in, not just architecturally, but as society as a whole. His lecture is entitled, I Am Connected. So Ben, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you, Paul. Wonderful to be with you again and everyone online. So I know that I have only 30 to 40 minutes, so I will jump immediately in my talk. Um, what I particularly like to do today is to go through some of the topics who are becoming, you could say, the most important briefs for architecture in the future. You could say maybe that for our profession, our briefs are for the future clearer than ever before, especially when it is dealing on the one hand not only with the current situation we have with the pandemic we are in, but mainly also everything around we know related to, or as we know, as everything related to our planet and the way how we have to reduce carbon emission. The governments who are actually already raising major questions about new regulations around this topic, etc. So and of course, that is our world. So it is actually the human-centric aspect of where we believe architects need to work with today, but particularly also, of course, work with the way how we can improve our environment. And as we know, not only the regulations there are goals and missions set out by particularly also the European government, and we know that we have to, in that sense, rethink our profession, and that's what I'd like to talk about today. What is it what we need to do in order to rethink our profession? How, with all the knowledge and technologies we have been working with within our profession, how can we direct this knowledge in a much clearer way, apart from the tools and the improvement with all the tools we work with right now, so that we can instrumentalize these tools towards the goals I just discussed. And I give you some examples later on, and during the talk I will give. The future of architecture planning is, of course, about designing for the environmental impact, as I said. But how do we do that? How can we make buildings who can become energy positive? And how can we combine that with educational hubs, so that not only when we make new circular, energy neutral, or even energy positive buildings, that they are also part of an environment where a lot of knowledge is going around, so that buildings become also prototypes of the way how we need to think about our planet in general, the built environment, and buildings in general. Uh, and of course, we know that our planet is becoming hotter and hotter, and the warnings have been already giving us many signs on how we have to reduce the heat load of coming towards our environment, and particularly the way how we can experience this heat load coming to our cities is even actually worrying at the moment. If we think of, for instance, the last summer, where in certain places of Europe we discovered already a heat of going over 40, where we had never had such a heat lot of experience in the cities, is something of a warning. We can maybe in our profession particularly can think of how we can reduce that heat load. And through the years, we have believed that it is important not only to make energy positive buildings and to make our profession more aware of the circular economy, but of course with other material research we do, we have invented, for instance, the coolest white, a white what is so reflective that with that we could reduce close to 20% of heat islands within the city. And actually, this is a product what is luckily enough used now in many uh, important parts of areas in cities where that heat load is quite high. And of course, what we have learned that architects need to then also hopefully use their capacity to combine their research and the products they design with the way how they present it and bring that to the outer world, because this is what I believe, that in a time like this, with the buildings we design, and if we can make buildings who become these prototype buildings, then also we as architects need to communicate about it. We have that responsibility to communicate about it to a larger public, to emphasize that we can take a lead within this aspect of the way how we bring these topics more forwards in the profession. And another example is, and this is some research we did a few years ago in Holland, in the way how we could reduce down uh, carbon emission by making sure that we produce more local food. And in Holland, you probably know, we are one of the most interesting food export leaders in the world, second in the world. We run an incredible amount of on yeah, their innovation, where with the food production and the way how we come with their innovative ideas, um, we're quite strange in that level, because our own food, what we eat every day on our plate, is traveling close to 33,000 kilometers before you get it on your plate. So I mean, this is actually ridiculous, because that generates, of course, an enormous amount of emissions. Where, of course, if we would be able to produce more local food, that would be much better for our yeah, for the planet, but also for us. It will be healthier for the way how we then also can hopefully produce that food. But then we need to think of new integral ways of how farmers can work together, and that is a whole topic and a major discussion. Not, I would say, only in Holland, but I would say in the world, because innovation is there, but it is not brought together in this field. You probably all know that with new strategies around drones, LED farming, vertical farming as they call it today, um, we can introduce new techniques in order to produce that food. Uh, but how can this technology affect our landscape, and what can we do with the way how we can then rethink about farming and integral and network farming, I would like to say. And there are beautiful examples already of the way through geo mapping we know what is the fertile ground of which kind of food you can produce on that ground. And it's interesting, because that system is another system, and you can see that here in this little map with the irregular structure you see on the left-hand side of the slide. You see that it is a less linear model than the way we farm at the moment in most of our countries, especially Holland. You know, the Mondrian landscape, as we know from his paintings, is almost like the way how we farm in Holland. It is very strict and well ordered, but it's not following the geo qualities of the qualities of the earth, or where what can be produced and not. So if we would introduce a new strategy of how we can improve that, then that will be also much better for a better, healthier food system. And of course, through drones, through, let's say, new ways and new techniques of how we can introduce a new set of machineries, and they are around, with the way how we can control and improve that farming strategy, we need to then also invest in these new technologies in order to combine it with this a new idea of farming. And as I said, vertical farming is already possible. Why don't we introduce that already in our buildings so that in the inner core, where we maybe can use the heat and the light even of that farming strategy in our environment, and who knows, produce more food locally. But that is then actually not related to farming, but also how that farming can in new ways be brought to local production and bringing communities together to be part of that vertical farming. And of course, the rural and the city activities can be combined in the way how, let's say, in a regional area with farmers, and then bringing that more to the buildings inside cities is something where a dialogue could happen, whereby a research center and maybe even a museum could be part of a regional strategy where people learn also more about and educate themselves more about this new form of farming, and also learn more about the healthy aspect of local farming. So, and we have introduced there new types of farms, as you can see in this slide. But you see also there a new type of landscape layouting and even a tower what controls then all the drones and the machinery around these farming strategies. And in this integral network farm, you have also a museum where people can learn more about that farming, what I just described. But as explained, vertical farming can come also to the city, and who knows, be part of a smaller community, or I mean, 3 levels of community. You could say a building community, maybe a community in the region, but also in the city, who can then work more on these farming strategies together. So, and as we know, the health of our environment, but also our own health, can be then definitely be improved. But how do we do that? Is it only food? Is it also that we, with architecture, can improve healthy strategies in the way how we can improve that social and aspect, sorry, of the way how we integrate new strategies of bringing people together, that they actively do more things with each other, so that through architecture and urban planning, we make sure that not only people come more together, that they communicate easily with each other, but that also new forms of walkability and activating people more to walk and do things in that environment is something where we strongly believe in lately. This is a project we designed in Singapore. It's a campus for urban planning, education, design, and landscape design and product design. So what is quite interesting, that all the different faculties are placed here in this environment. But what we did, we hide here most of the elevators. People walk around much more. They can use more staircases, and the landscape is guiding these people, especially not only the students, but the visitors, professors, and everyone who is around and is connected to this campus. And what we did is not to introduce a traditional model of the campus model, whereby each building is having its own faculty. No, we combined each faculty with the vertical staircases in one building. So in one building, you have landscape, urban design, product design, architecture, all be combined into this one building, so that all the students and professors and visitors, as I mentioned, could always meet each other in order to interact and stimulate with that innovation and stimulate also with that social interaction. So here, health and social interaction are promoting the idea of stimulating with that also the exchange of ideas and knowledge. And of course, what is the key there is that we want to make sure that this model is giving also the feeling that you are belonging not only to one faculty, to one world, but that you can get a much better total education around what is happening in not only in the world of landscape design, architecture, etc., but that also the ideas of sustainability, circularity, and all these things are better exchanged. And as I said, people here in this building take much more staircases, and it is proven that taking 8 stairs a day reduces, so many risks, health risks, and being more socially interactive with each other, or being more connected, better to say, is it proved also is maybe one of the top reasons why we having a much healthier life is to be with each other that is already proven as well. So and especially in times where we are in right now, it's not so easy to connect better, apart from, of course, virtually. But this is, of course, not how we can survive. We need to be with each other. We need to communicate with each other. We need to produce through architecture and planning this organizational strategy of how we can bring a better social and healthy set of communities together. But technology plays in that, of course, an important role. And I've already, I think, last year presented a little part of this project, but we already have been working with the way how data platforms can help the community in order to produce food together with each other, or sport with each other, or think about new services who can be connected to that community. And of course, it's about equal exchange, and that these data are protected, because people don't like to be involved in data where they don't know where these data are going to. So we have through the data platform we are setting up for this neighborhood, we have learned that it needs to be blockchained. We use cyber technology so that the data stays within the community, and that if you would like to be part of it, then you can be part of it. But if you don't like to be part of the data exchange about the way how you can produce more energy, or be more energy neutral, with the way how you are doing that in the community through, let's say, all kinds of new techniques, then that stimulates also people. We have learned to do that in a group, so that you do that not only on your own, but as I said, you don't have to be part of it. You can be part of it. And it's not about energy production. It's also about new forms of mobility, etc. We introduce here, so that cars can be shared, and that it is known in the community where these cars can be found, and that most of the cars are on the edge of the urban area, and that most of the area in the community is green, and can be used for playgrounds, sports, and the production of food. And of course, as I said, many aspects in this environment have been used in order to make circular, like water. It's used again, rainwater is used again. The grey water is even used again. So the water you use for your toilets and any other parts within the in the buildings is recycled and reused again. Food is produced in the community for 60% and even up to 80% with the farmers around the community. And energy I already explained before. But we have now, since this project, we have learned that that not only the cities are becoming more and more interested in this topic, how technology can help or build environment, because we argue that that we are not smart city designers. We believe more in how technology can do only the good things in our environment, like I mentioned, through sustainability, food production, and social interaction you can improve with that, etc. But what is interesting that we do get now out of the sector of healthcare, for instance, a lot of questions. For instance, this is a project we do in Italy, where through an health fund, a pension fund, also two funds are here introducing a new idea of daily care for the ones who are or connected to a hospital. You can see on the right hand side, and then slowly during the the, the, the the shorter stays and the longer stays of the persons who can stay in this hospital, they can also go to their own environment again, and through, let's say, certain types of illnesses, they can actually become looser, be connected towards the specialist of the hospital. And through this, we used technology, or we're going to use technology in order to keep the connection still with the patients from the hospital, but you still have your own apartment, your house, your garden, so that you don't feel that you every day are connected or be part of the hospital environment alone. You will live around the hospital, but you are not in the hospital. So, and this project changes a whole new typology of thinking of what is the future of the hospital and how it can be connected to the built environment in a social new type of experience, and what will change the behavior of the way how we live with or either chronic illness or an illness what can be healed. So I mean, it's really wonderful that we discover more and more that through not only technology, but through the rethinking of the organizational models we have worked with in architecture and with technology, that you can then rethink the whole system of typological uh, 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 objects we have been working with before. So I mean, I find it really very exciting that this is possible today. What I will do is I will. This was my third project to explain the similar strategy we have been working with, but I like to skip this because otherwise I will move out of my time. I realize now. But technology is important to achieve the goals where I started with in the beginning of the lecture. And already in the late 90s, we had a strategy developed called deep planning, whereby we followed user groups in the city, and not, not through in that time sensor technology, because there was not enough sensor technology, but we used the data of the city planners of New York, for instance, of how many tourists would come in which area, and they were, I mean, in that sense, certain cities were quite far already with this. But what we discovered through the analysis of where people move, and that you with that know that through the movement, also that by the data you can then connect to the way how they are, these people are user groups are then using also a particular kind of infrastructure, for instance. You can slowly discover how you could combine certain programs for which location in which part of the city to activate that's part of the city, because it's not active enough. It's too isolated, as we know from many parts of the cities where there are too many monofunctional areas, like where too many office buildings are designed in one area. You need to bring in other programs, for instance, hotels, housing, in order to have a much more safer environment in the night, for instance. So we call that clockwise planning, in the relationship towards the way how we looked at the city through, you could say, almost an X-ray model of the way how data could then give us new insight of the dynamics of the city. And this gave us so much insight already in the late 90s, in the beginning of 2000, of how people and the social interaction can do so much more for a location than only ground value alone. And to give you a very simple example, and that is that if you might have, take for instance a fantastic shop, take for instance Louis Vuitton, and they would like to be in the best part of the city, but they are on the wrong side of the street and they don't have any people coming to their shop, you don't have any ground value. So we discovered that the value, the social value of bringing people and activating locations through the way how you mix the right amount of user groups on the location, that is much more important than any real estate value than you can ever think of. So that creates a whole new mindset in the way how we need to plan today, as we have discovered. And then there are other techniques, of course, we all work with lately, luckily enough, BIM, but we call it lately BIM speed. And we connect all these software and latest techniques we have been working with BIM, and that's something what is still, particularly in our office, further developed, because we believe that here is a future to be found in the way how we can combine cost, these social interactive aspects, as I mentioned, but also connected to the way how, for instance, in BIM, you can see already how many materials you have in the building. And through these materials, you know also how much value you have in the building so that they can be reused through material passports over a time when the building needs to be, for instance, demolished again and be reused, who knows, in other parts of the city. And another interesting platform we have developed, maybe you have heard of this, is quite amazing. We've developed a Space4 platform together with Squint Opera, who started with in this principle, but it is a separate company, also with Big being involved here with this Space4 platform. What is the most interesting is that not only you as an architect, but also the specialist where you work with, on the level of all the topics I mentioned, with the client and his or her specialist, with possibly also city planners and any other type of stranger you might like to have on the table of helping with you to think about the innovation of the future of the city, can be part of this design platform in order to look and experience and see how you can improve with that the quality of the design. And it's quite amazing. It's where we believe the future is going to, so that you don't work and design only on your own as a company, but that you get everyone involved who you think needs to be involved in order to make much more intelligent products than we have maybe be done as we have done before. So my message is to everyone in the profession: design with the future in mind, because everything we design today is not finished tomorrow. Most of the large-scale projects, city projects, are finished in 5 to 6 years' time. And we know the targets we have to work on today. We know that we have to actually reduce an enormous amount of carbon emission. We know that we have to rethink the circular economy around the way how we build. You know, not only how we design, but particularly how we build. And it's time to build an environment that catch up with technology, because everyone knows my statement. Architects might be in the iPhone phase, but the building industry is still in the Walkman phase. I sometimes joke, and some builders might become a bit angry with that statement, because there is, luckily enough, 3D printing happening in the world of design and architecture, or there are innovations happening, luckily enough, in the building industry, but we need to all together to improve it. Thank you very much.
Ben, thank you for that. A lot of ground covered, rich territory for conversation. Could I kick off by asking you to comment on the sort of paradox that, on the one hand, technology can give designers or groups of designers immense insights and immense possibilities to do things which a generation ago would have been very difficult. But on the other hand, the individual teams and groups and clients are working within a context now because of climate change and the pandemic and increased population growth, where it seems that we're, as it were, looking at the metaverse, and we're looking in a big way rather than an individual way. Now, what is it that designers can do to bridge this gap, if it is a gap?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mentioned that a bit in the beginning, that the human-centric approach is at the moment very important towards design. When I talk about user groups, it sounds a little bit abstract, but in a way, you talk about, yeah, the future life of people, how they enjoy the city, how they, for instance, can be better connected in a vertical environment. A story of that in elevators people don't talk to each other. I mean, how can you make sure that through fire staircases, why don't we make fire staircases not a little bit more attractive, so that people, even when you live on the 34th floor and you want to move to maybe an amenity space on the 35th or 36th floor, why don't you walk? Why don't you? Then you see your neighbor, and then you can get to know your neighbor. Then hopefully, when you work so often alone at the moment, when you are isolated, we know that from the people in the office, so many people feel alone in this time. How can we improve the built environment? What can we learn? Sorry, out of this time to improve certain things in the built environment and the buildings we design, in order to make sure that people are a little bit better connected. That's already a little step, and that's where I believe we have to think about as planners and architects, that we have to try to imagine ourselves to be that person. That is the most important. Otherwise you're not on the other side of the table of that what you design, as you know what I mean.
I think this is a fascinating area. I'm always reminded about Rainer Banham's famous essay in which he noted that for a lot of people driving to work in California, far from it being an urban nightmare, it was the most enjoyable part of their day, because they could operate like, the hermit in a cell with peace and quiet. They could be learning French, listening to the radio, or listening to music. Or, of course, they could be getting very angry with the traffic, but they would be autonomous individuals, kind of responsible for what they were doing all alone. And I was sort of thinking about that when you described your extremely interesting Italian hospital, or we should say healthcare project, which seemed to be trying to make this bridge between the individual experience. You want to be alone, you want to be quiet, you want to be calm, you're recovering from something. Yet on the other hand, you do need to be connected to technology and the wider world of the physical hospital. Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, exactly. I'm at the moment the proudest of that project, because I know that world a little bit, because my father was involved in healthcare, and so I knew the stories, and it was not always pleasant, but also quite fascinating when we visited with him the hospital. But it was not a world where and still is not a world where you'd like to be in. It's something what is improving, luckily enough, and it's not because of the privatization of the hospitals, because that's what I think is not always a good thing, but it is true that if you would be able to live a life with even an aspect where you feel that you feel safe, because the specialist is around the corner, but you can have your own garden, and you can meditate, and you can enjoy the time of healing in a better way than let's say being in that abstract clinical world, then of course it will improve healing, and that's already proven. Psychologists can tell you a lot about that, but you have to make the environment for that. And I think that's I like the Benham variant a lot, because I believe that we do that in Holland on the bike. How wonderful it is to do this even when it rains. Who cares about the rain? You're on the bike. It's like flying. You just go over the bridges in Amsterdam. It's like if you in an environment of a landscape where you are in the hills and you forget your stress and or the difficulties of the day, and it's wonderful to be on that bike. It's yeah, and these things, luckily enough, are now better improved in cities. Look at what Paris is doing, but yeah, they sound like little things like Benham described, but you can make them really big and more important so that everyone can enjoy that.
I wanted to move on to another aspect of your talk, which was about the design of systems. We heard yesterday from the Chief Scientific Advisor to one of the UK government departments about the way in which the notion of the architecture of systems will be opening up new territory to designers or people with an architectural training, but actually who want to be involved in outcomes which are not to do with buildings, but are to do with the real design of processes. Again, I think you were sort of referring to this in your medical scheme. And I wonder whether you think that the design professions as a whole need to formally embrace the sort of different aspects of, say, computer-based system design, rather than almost inevitably thinking about exteriors and interiors and insulation and walls.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, because of course it needs to be. We need to inform design much better through technology in order to optimize, yeah, the systems where we work with. Yes, but it's unbelievable. It's the difficulty of this change is that we need to radically change our education. We need to really radically change this. If I talk to the way how my friends in the world of they call it the tech world, is how much innovation is there to be found, and how much uh, system thinking is totally changing the world of, or either bankers or city planners, or for instance, I'll give you a nice example. Probably you have heard of Geofy. It's a company what was set it up 6 years ago. This person, I'm not going to maybe go into the details, but this person invented a new algorithmic system where he could find out very quickly in through his software program of how and where certain grounds are to be found in the Dutch landscape. So 6 years ago, so he found, for instance, for a particular bank in Holland, 700 grounds back in the stock, what the bank could not find back anymore. Just to give you an example, through this technology, and the company moved to many parts of the world, because not only banks have the problem that they don't know where their grounds anymore. Many pension funds, investors, so just to give you an example of, through technology, a whole mindset and a new introduction of how you can deal with grounds was suddenly turned around, totally upside down, turned around in a radical way. But
Thank you
that is
very
not
much,
giving,
Ben.
is
I
not giving
think
you a
we're
full
coming
answer.
to an end of our time, so not a bad note to end on, because I think the world of radical transformation must be one in which creative design intelligence will have a huge part to play. Thank you very much for your talk, and
Thank you
hope to
all.
see you soon.